afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for making it down here on this Thursday afternoon. Today we have Tosha Zeitlin. She will be presenting on mentorship. We've had Tosha present in one of our previous panels before, if you guys were here. And today she'll go in depth into the subject.
We are super fortunate to have Tosha with us. She was a huge advocate for getting our website launched last summer, fishwomensnetwork.com, if you haven't seen it. Currently undergoing some issues, so we thank you guys for registering through Eventbrite today. I know it takes a couple extra steps, and hopefully we'll have that fixed for you guys for the next event. We're thrilled to have Tosha. She's been a great advocate for the Women's Network, as well as a mentor to Paris and I as we worked through the launch. So as we approach our 1 year, we thought what would be more fitting than to have her as a speaker for you guys and really start delving into what our relationships as women mean in the workplace and what mentorship means in your career. So with that, Tosha.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So, first things first, my apologies, I have a horrible cold. I was trying to pass it off as allergies, but it's turned into a full-blown cold. So I sound like I have a frog in my throat. I don't. But yeah, so mentorship. This is a personal perspective. Mentorship's very personal. And so I'm sharing with you kind of how I feel about things. There's some things in here that I've taken from sites, resources, and I'd feel free to ask me at the end some questions. But we'll just jump right in and go with it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about who I am. A lot of you know who I am. I either have worked with you or you've been to previous things that I've spoken at. But just to catch us all up, I'm going to talk about what a mentor is, and really more of a definition, and then the roles of a mentor and a mentee, and kind of what you get out of those roles. And then the whys. Why would you even want a mentor? Or do you think you need a mentor? And then I'm going to talk about some common mentorship myths. I think a lot of times people don't reach out and ask the questions because of some of these myths. Then I'll talk about how to find one, like what does that look like? And then there's just this brief, what is a mentor versus a sponsor? For those of you who have heard the different terms, there's also coach in there. We'll just kind of touch on that. Then I'll talk about really more my experience and what I've gone through, anything I haven't spoken about when I get through all the other slides. And then questions at the end. If you feel like there's a point you need to interject, I'm open to taking questions, but at the end there'll be some time left over. All right, so who am I? Tosha Zeitlin. I'm the Director of IT Service Management. I've been here at DISH for this August will be my 10th year, so August of 2006 I started here. I currently run application support in service management. So this is Oracle ERP application support, customer apps, custom apps, sorry. Gosh, this cold, I am on cold medicine, so forgive me. I don't want to be like, yeah. Change management, I have frontline support, so when you call 32222, those people that answer the phone, they're on our team. We have incident and problem, and if I've missed anybody, my apologies. ServiceNow, those of you who go on T-Bar Online and you actually use that portal to order things, that's actually on my team, so we rolled that out last year as well. So the reason I was asked to participate in today's speech is because whenever I talk to people, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been very fortunate in my career to have people that I've been able to lean on, ask questions of. I would call them mentors. They probably didn't necessarily have that title. I didn't say, this is my mentor and introduce them to somebody. But I've had quite a few people who have been in my life who have steered me in the right direction or kicked me in the butt or whatever I needed. I've also had sponsors, which I do differentiate and have really helped me in my career, my growth, and where I am today. Additionally, I have some coaches, and I have two coaches, and both of them are paid positions, so that kind of changes the dynamic a little bit versus somebody just kind of coming into your life and saying, I really see you as somebody special. You're actually reaching out and saying, hey, I need this advice or this area. Forget what else I was going to say about myself. I'm a mom, so that's my number one job, and I find it very, the balancing act can be a lot. So having mentors that have that experience as well has been really, I've been very fortunate. I put this slide here with all these things around mentor. I like to think of myself as a mentor. If somebody asks me for help or I see opportunities, I really try to reach out and help them. So I've been very fortunate to progress through to the point where I feel like I'm actually worthy of being a mentor. I mean, I've had some successes that then when somebody asks me questions, I'm like, I actually have something to give this person. I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to look at it. We all have gifts and we all have things that we could share. But there was something about me that once I got to a certain point, I was like, oh, I could share that with you. I've had a lot of life experience. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, which means when you think about, I thought of last night of really good analogies, like if you were going to bake, I don't know, a fancy cake for a party, and you know somebody who's a really good chef, they're a baker, but you may be like, oh my gosh, I'm not as good as them. I'm not going to be able to make this beautiful cake that they're able to make, and so you may not want to ask them for their help. So you may go out to the internet and you do some research and it tells you all these things, but you don't really get their expertise. And then you go and you bake your cake and it falls flat in the middle and you're like, what just happened? And then you realize, you're telling this person who you know is a good baker, I don't know how you do it. And then that person goes, oh, we live in Colorado and it's high altitude. And if you throw 2 tablespoons of flour into the batter, it won't sink in the middle. And you're like, oh my gosh, if I would have asked that person. And I see that as mentorship. It's being willing to ask somebody for their expertise without the fear of being chastised or don't you know how to bake? I mean, we all have things that we carry with us, and being willing to ask is really the key to mentorship. So hopefully that resonates a little bit. It wasn't the analogy I was looking for, but it's what came out in my cold fuzz here. So, all right, so what is a mentor? So a mentor, on the wiki that I found, is an experienced and trusted advisor. And over on the right here, I really like this. Mentoring is a brain to pick, an ear to listen, and a push in the right direction. I thought that was actually really resonated with me because that's exactly what I've used mentoring for. The other one is someone who teaches or gives you help and advice to a less experienced and often younger person, although you'll hear when I get to the myths, that's actually not really, it doesn't have to be somebody older than you, but a lot of times experience does come with age, and in my case, it ends up being true. I liked this one, and I know a lot of people who have come here to work at DISH. An employee mentorship program can be a really big retention tool in any environment, because you build relationships, you have somebody who's giving you advice, you're learning about the culture, you're learning about the things that DISH does. Our business is very complicated. For those of you that really maybe are just learning your area, you don't realize how integrated we all are because there's a lot of silos. But if you have somebody, if you can reach across and learn from them, it can really be beneficial for you career-wise, as well as feeling really comfortable in your job. I remember it took me probably 6 months before I could really say I knew my job here at DISH, because it was that complicated. But having people that I could ask questions really helped. We don't have a formal employee training program or mentorship program, but I do think that there's a lot of opportunities for departments to take this on, as well as if people ask, you'd be surprised how many people really can share and really speed up that cycle of becoming comfortable with your job. And then mentors, I put these two, these are mine. Mentors are organic relationships that develop over time, and it's really true. I've never, like I said, had somebody that said, hi, can I be your mentor? I said, would you be my mentor? Seems very formal and kind of uncomfortable. I was just like, really, but they develop over time. So sometimes you may use somebody as a mentor for one specific area, and then you may come back to them at a later date and remember that they had experience. So I think they're organic. You learn. Plus, you're in meetings. Like if you're in this meeting with me right now and you're like, gosh, I really would love to pick her brain. And you're like, over time, we may build a relationship and that could happen. So I just think you have to just be open to it. And then a big one that I use, mentor that I've used in the past, and actually is a sounding board for my work decisions. And I find these type of mentors are really my employees. So I will ask them questions about myself. I'll ask them questions about why they did different things. And so that sounding board helps me to really figure out like who I'm working with. And so this being a sounding board is really digging down instead of trying to go up and always thinking you have to jump up. If you really get to understand yourself, it's going to be the peers and the people that you work with on a daily basis, as well as people that work for you if you're a manager. All right. So roles and expectations. So I thought this was interesting. You can't even read it, but if it's just, I didn't realize that when it was on here, it looks great. But you can look this up. The site is down here, mentorworking.com. And I thought this was interesting. Obviously there's two people, a mentor and a mentee. The big thing that this really says in the small print that I even can't read, and I'm closer than you, is that it's your choice as a mentee to embark on this. This is not somebody reaching out to you and saying, hey, I'd really like to give you some feedback. It may happen that way, that somebody says those things to you and then you go, wow, I could really learn from this person. But making a decision on your career, where you're at, do I need somebody to bounce this off of, and being really comfortable to do so really is the mentee. This is your career, it's I lost the word, but it's yours. You can't think that it's going to be somebody else is going to do this for you. In the sense where you have formal training, that they have mentor programs, that's actually probably a little more formal. You're being paired up with somebody. They may be like, oh my goodness, do I have to do this if they're not volunteering? So in this sense, I do think I agree with this. It has to be you're ready for it and you're open for it. Because just because you say, I want to meet with you and get your feedback on how I'm doing, this person, this mentor, is not there for you to impress. This person is not there for you to just be pat on the back that you're doing all the right things. Because if you're just going to do that, wait till your PA cycle and find out if where your score is. This is really, you want something to grow in. You want to be looking at your career and you're like, hey, how do I get to the next level? What does that look like, and what do I need to learn? So I think I see that for myself, and again, this is my perspective. But I do see a mentor as somebody that when you go to them, you've either seen them in action, you've heard about them, and you're like, I really could learn something from this person. If you came to me and said, I really want to learn how to develop Java scripting, and I want to sit down with you and talk about your experiences, you probably don't know me. Because I don't write JavaScript, and I wouldn't know the first thing to tell you. I'd pass you to one of my employees who's really good at it. But if you came to me and say, I really want to be a manager someday, and I want to be a leader, and how did you get there, and tell me your story, that's right in my wheelhouse, and I would love to share that with you. And so knowing what you want to learn and reaching out to somebody who has maybe a skill set or something that you admire, that's actually why you'd look at that. Over here on the side, it says how a mentor was helped. And I liked these, and it's why I kind of cut this thing apart. Career introductions. They may introduce you to people. Corporate understanding, and I talked about that. If you actually want to know an area of the business and you're like reaching across the aisle, you're like, I know nothing about marketing, or I know nothing about sales, and you actually find somebody that you've maybe run into at the coffee counter, and you're like, I want to learn more about your area. You'd be surprised how many people would be they would see you as ambitious. They would see you as somebody who's taking ownership of your career, and that you're pretty direct, and they'd be like, wow, this might be somebody I could help out. Problem solving, I think that's kind of my thing, sounding board. Overcoming hurdles. I can't tell you how many difficult decisions I've had here at Dish that I've tried to take on myself, and that weight on your own shoulders is almost you lose sleep, and you're like, oh, I have to do this all myself. And you'd be surprised how many people you could just bounce things off, and they could be a mentor for a minute, an hour, a day, a year. This is kind of using that mentor as more of a definition of somebody to help you with something. Exploring work methods. I mean, I think that's kind of, let's say you were in an accounting department as I think about my fellow accountants in here, or from that department, and you're trying to figure out how to do your job, having somebody who actually knows how to do those things and has maybe figured out, why are they so fast at this? I mean, these people could really help you. And it's not just training, it's giving you, sometimes it's the mental way to look at things, can be very powerful for you. And then last, career planning, which is what I think having a mentor is really probably the most powerful. At the end of the process, the mentee should feel strengthened by the experience, be able to see things with greater clarity, and have a defined career path and be able to continue independently. So this is teaching you to fish. This is, you meet with somebody and they give you some wisdom, and then you take that wisdom and you apply it, or you choose not to. You say, oh, wow, that was not what I expected. Well, you do that, I don't do that. And that's true, you'll find those, because not everything everybody else does is right for you. You are all different people, and so what you're learning from the people that you're sitting with, if you choose somebody just like you, probably going to get a lot of pats on the back, because you're going to do a lot of things very similar. But finding somebody who can really teach you how to see other people and experiences can be very powerful for you, because none of us in here are exactly the same. And so learning kind of what are those personality types is great. So I liked this, just, again, self-explanatory, but I do think that it needs to be said. So why would you have a mentor? Here are a few reasons, and you could think of probably many more. You're ready to dedicate time to yourself, your career, and your growth. You're establishing and achieving and want to achieve your career growth. And this one is, I'll tell you my experience in this is up until just 5 years ago, I had a job. I loved my job. I had a great job. I had 2 kids. My husband had just come back from Iraq, and I had started working here at Dish. I guess 5 years ago is when I made a change. 9 years ago I started working here, and my husband had come back and I had a job. I had a job for 4 years before I was promoted to senior manager. But I just had a job, and I loved it, and I got a paycheck, and I went home, and I didn't really know what it meant to me. Like, am I going up? Am I going out? People would ask you like those interview questions, like, what do you want to be in 5 years? And I was like, a mom and having a job. And then all of a sudden one day, I had some successes behind me. I had some really great people who helped me get across the line on those successes. And I said, I think I want a career. I want something more than what I have today. I don't know what that looks like. And I was given some very good advice. And so I think that's key is it's okay to have a job. It's okay to say, I'm doing really good at what I'm doing today. Not everybody has to move up, and that's not all of our ambitions is to say I necessarily want to manage. But you may want to be, if you were a developer, you may want to be not just an analyst, you want to be senior, you want to be a principal or staff principal. So you want to get to those next levels, and as you identify those things, a mentor can help you because if you've picked somebody who's already done those things, it can really help. So working on your blind spots, this is an interesting one because some of my blind spots I know, so people will give me feedback and I'm like, oh gosh, that one comes up, and my team, I asked them for some feedback probably 6 or 7 months ago, and the feedback was not new. I mean, I was like, oh yeah, and I still am having a difficult time making those changes even though I've received the feedback. But blind spots are things sometimes people will say, you trail off and we have to kind of bring you back. And I'm like, really? Gosh, I thought that was really pertinent to the conversation. So seeing that how other people see you, and I think I have that one, you'll see that in my experiences, having people tell you how they see you is very eye-opening. And that's what a mentor can provide you is you think you're showing up one certain way. Like I think I'm sitting here, a certain way, and you may be looking at me and thinking something totally different. And if there's something I could learn from that, it'd be great for us to sit down and talk about it, because I want to show up the way I feel. I don't want to show up and always be perceived the way that is not how I feel inside. So I think stretching yourself, that's actually really important. You're doing well, and then all of a sudden you start kind of feeling like you're going through the motions, and you're like, gosh, this person's doing what I'd love to do. I want to do that. And yet it may, in your mind, well, I wasn't educated in that. That wasn't where my education was, or that person's doing it, so there's no room. But if you want to stretch yourself and you start asking, you'd be surprised how many opportunities will open up. And it may be that you find out this is 2 years away, but then now you have a goal, and now you can come up with that path, and it can be very exciting. And all of this is about your frame of mind on this, right? I mean, that's why I said the mentee comes to it with being ready. If somebody tells you, I think, like me sitting here, I think you hunch too much, right? If somebody tells me that and I go, I don't like that person now. Was I really open to the feedback? Why did I ask? So you have to prepare yourself mentally when you go to talk to somebody. Am I really open and ready for the growth that this might, it's going to be uncomfortable for you. And the mentor might say, this is uncomfortable for me to say to you, but I think I need to say it, right? I think if you really want to grow, this is an area. And I think that's great. So, and I say here, I think I'm going to drive this just until the end of this over and over and over. You have to ask. There's so many people who are willing to help if you just ask. If you keep in your mind going, oh, I may not be worthy, or I may not, it took me a long time to be open for other people to come talk to me because I didn't think I was ready. So anyway, so here's some myths. I think there was one up here that I didn't put up, but mentors choosing your mentees, I think it can happen that way, but a lot of times it's the other way around. It's you being ready for something and identifying that you're ready to move in that direction, that it's a one-way street. Like I've mentioned with my employees, in talking to them, I learned so much about myself and about things that I'm like, wow, that's not a skill set I have. I want to learn more about that. So it is a learning. It's a one-to-one relationship where you're both learning. And a lot of times, and I've mentioned this to both Michelle and Paris, is that For me, being in my generation and then kind of starting to manage the next generation down, I don't understand all of the motivations and kind of, I'm like, why is this so difficult? Like, I don't understand. Like, why aren't we seeing eye to eye? But if I'm open to having people who, and we've had conversations where I've asked questions and I'm like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Like, I thought of it only in my filter. And so by asking and going around and around, I'm like, I get it. And then I was able to impart on them kind of what my feelings about certain issues were. And I think it resonates for them, like, oh, okay. And we all have a lot to learn, whether it be that age differential and that gender, or not gender, generational, could be gender, but generational piece. It really does make, yeah, I saw a lot of smiles when I said that. But I do think you're both learning. And if you feel like, oh, you come in and you're like, I know I'm taking your time. No, if that person is giving you the time, this is really about you. You're growing. You're giving them something too. So I would just keep that in your mind as you do decide to ask anybody, or you just have a conversation with somebody. They wouldn't be there if they didn't want to. All right. Yeah, in a formal relationship with mentors driving, if you wait for a mentor to set up a meeting with you, you're probably not going to get the meeting. It's actually, my employees do this all the time. I'll say, oh yeah, I'll set that up. And they'll go, I'll send you an invite, because they know it'll be days, and it's not personal. It's just we all get busy. And so it needs to be something that you're driving. It's not the same thing as a coach. Like I mentioned, a coach is usually, I want to work on this thing. They're educated in that thing, or they have done that thing before. And it's a bracketed type experience with a coach. Like I said, my coaches, both of them, have been paid, whether by the company or myself. And the reason I've done that is I do find that sometimes I'm talking about the same thing all the time. So I've mentioned some of my areas that I need to learn and grow in. And if I was to go to a mentor or a sponsor and keep talking about the same thing, and they give me the advice, and then I bring it up again and they give me the advice, and I keep repeating that, it can really wear somebody out. So in the coaching situation, it's something I know I need to work on. Maybe my public speaking, maybe don't hunch, these things are things I want to work on, and there's somebody who's professional who can actually specifically give me that coaching to do. And then when that's over, I move on and I hopefully have learned something. Must be older. Not necessarily, but a lot of people who are older have experience in the things you're trying to learn, so you can definitely use their experience. And why reinvent the wheel? I mean, we all know that there's methods and there's processes, and if somebody says to you, oh, you want to learn this? Go out to this site. That's great to just get that resource. And if you're going to be trying to fumble through it, it can feel kind of like this perpetual, like, oh, I don't even know if this is working. So I think just, it doesn't have to be older, but I think experience means something. Time consuming, it could be time consuming, but I will tell you, most of the people who have been giving me advice, I can barely get 15 minutes with them. So I make it worthwhile. I bring my notes. I bring specific things I want to ask them about. Hey, I'm thinking about this. And a lot of times it'll go over, I'll go over a little bit, but it's not time consuming for the mentor and the mentee. It's your career. You own it. You should put some time into this. I mean, if you took an hour a week, that's 52 hours a year, focusing on you and your development and your career and kind of where am I at, and once a year updating your resume with the projects you've worked on, I mean, that's valuable. 52 hours, I could do a lot in 52 hours, or at least I think I could. It's like a week, right? A week a year that you could give to yourself. So I think it's really a frame of mind, how you look at mentoring and how you look at your career and yourself. And I've already said that one. So how to find a mentor. This was interesting. I've said that, but really ask yourself. Ask someone, find out someone who says they have a mentor, and ask them, like, how'd you get a mentor? Like, what does that look like? And really think to yourself, like, what is it that you're trying to learn from? Clarify what you want. So this is before you even go to a mentor, and we've talked about that. If it's career advice, if it's what is dish, if it's how to be a mom and balance your work life. I had some really good advice on that. I think I've given it in previous ones, but I'll give it to you again. I was in my MBA program and I was assigned a mentor to help me through my large capstone project. And within 3 weeks, I was working 410s because I was off on Fridays, and then I was going to these things, and I had like 4 tests during the week, and I was, all of a sudden I was laying on, midnight one night, I'm laying on the floor, and I said, I haven't cooked for my family in a week. Like it was to the point where I was feeling like a failure. So I called this coach, and we had a late night conversation, and I said, I think I have to quit. I think the MBA program is way too much for me, and I really appreciate your time. I'm probably going to lose a lot in tuition, but thanks. And she goes, well, hold on a second. She goes, you cannot do everything all at every week. You can't do all the things. So prioritize. Pick one thing this week that's actually going to be your top priority, and make that your top priority. If it's making your kids dinner this week, make dinner this week. But your grades, you're probably going to get a B. You may not be a 4.0 through your executive MBA program, which of course my mentor was, right? She was like the top of the class. I was like, oh, that's kind of difficult. But she's like, you have to choose. Do you want to be the person who has the A's all the way through? Or are you okay with being a B student? That was a difficult thing, but I'm like, I want to be a mom, and my kids rely on me. And then there was work. I still had to get my job done. I had over 50 employees who were counting on me to set, vision and make sure that the balls were still rolling. And so every week I'd pick one thing. So if it was studying this week, then the other things I would talk to my husband and we'd work out. He's going to make dinner. He's, those things. If it was school, then I would focus on school. So if you get the picture, you have to kind of set those things as what's important to you. Think outside your cubicle, don't restrict yourself. So set up a meeting. So maybe it's like I said, you're at the coffee counter and you're out there and you see somebody, you're like, hey, could I pick your brain? And then really set up that meeting and actually make an agenda. Here's what I want to talk about. And it could just be the 1 or 2 points that you want to talk about. And then be clear kind of what your expectations are. Hey, would you be willing to meet with me once a month, every Friday, one Friday a month, and just to walk through kind of how I'm doing? And that person may say, oh, I don't know if I'd be able to do that on Fridays, but I'll do it once a month. Figure out kind of what that would look like, how you would go about this. I want you to give me assignments, things that I could work on, et cetera. And so really be clear on kind of what you want out of the relationship. And the mentor may say to you, you know what, I can't commit to that, or I'm not the right person, go talk to this person. So really be open what your expectations are, because your time's valuable and their time's valuable, and so you want to make sure that this is a growth opportunity. And then define a process, the cadence that you want to meet, assignments, discuss your progress, and use your time wisely. In no instance ever, other than my coaching, have I ever had a mentor or a sponsor who I've set up a regular meeting with. I'm going to be honest with you. This was kind of textbook. It's been a lot more organic. It's been more like when I need advice, I go in and talk to that person. When I have a business decision, I go in and I ask them for that advice. But I do think it's a good idea, especially if you're starting out or if you're kind of trying to decide where you want to go. Maybe there's more of, tell me your story, and you set up a few meetings to actually get through that, and then maybe it can become more organic, or maybe that person really likes the structure of it. But I think that's part of being clear. All right, so mentor versus sponsor, and I'm probably gonna have to read this, but here, mentors act as a sounding board or a shoulder to cry on. It's true. It's a shoulder to cry on, because I have cried. Offering advice as needed and support and guidance as requested. But sponsors, in contrast, are much more vested in their proteges, offering guidance and critical feedback because they believe in them. And it's not that a mentor doesn't believe in you, it's just that this person has seen something in you. In a lot of instances, there's somebody in either your direct line and they have experience with you working, they've worked on a project with you, and they've seen something in you that they go, ooh, there's a spark. This person really was really good collaborator, and gosh, I'd love to have them on other projects. So they start sponsoring you, and they pull you into projects. So when they request a resource from your department, they say, I want to work with that person again. And you start noticing, you build this kind of relationship where this person is really taking a vested interest in you through the work lens. I think mentors is somebody you're seeking out information because you want to grow within yourself. Again, these are structured. Sometimes they blend. Sometimes a mentor can become a sponsor. So that's why we're having this discussion. It's much more organic and fluid than what some of these definitions are. But I love the next one. Trust is at the heart of the relationship. It's very true. If you don't trust the person you're talking to and you're sitting there asking for advice from them, you're probably not learning anything. And if you just want the person to say, you're doing a great job, good for you, it's not worth your time. when I put my faith in up and coming talent and become their sponsor, I need to know that I can totally depend on them. And this is really key because they are all, after all, walking around with my brand on. And this came from an executive. When you have somebody who you're saying, this is my mentor, this is my sponsor, and I think this goes across both, you really are representing that person. So if somebody gives you critical feedback, they're like, I think you're really argumentative in meetings. And then that person comes into the meeting and you've been asking for advice and you're still argumentative. I mean, they're kind of like, wow, we've been working on this, like see it as an opportunity, but it's also about your relationship with this person. Your name starts getting associated with these people. And I agree with this. I've actually had this conversation with an employee of mine where I said, hold on a second, my department we don't argue in meetings. Let's not be that. Let's go into these meetings and be open. And I've here at Dish, I think I've told other groups, I've had 17 different managers here at Dish, actually 15 different managers, 17 different assignments in Oracle. And all of those managers, I mean, it's a lot. You've been moved around quite a bit. And when you're in that situation where all of a sudden somebody's kind of representing you, you take it seriously. And if you're gonna come into a meeting, like I was just gonna say, in all these different roles, I've never said no. I don't say no. No, why say no? Let's say how, why, what would be the right way to do it? And just asking questions can change it. Well, if you have an employee who's representing you, they're in your department and you've been trying to help them with some of their career things and they're like, no, we're not gonna do that. First thing I do is like, who are you, right? I'm like, hold on. And I really value, and you don't have to have the same values as me, but if you're gonna be somebody asking me for advice and you're gonna be somebody working for me, let's at least understand what my values are. So I think that this is really important. This book, Forget a Mentor, Find a Sponsor by Sylvia Ann Hewlett, was actually talked about during the an event that the Dish Women's Network actually attended, and some of you may have attended. And basically this is about fast forwarding your career. Sponsors can actually open doors for you within positions that you're in. If they have an opportunity and they know that you're capable of something, they'll reach out to you and say, hey, I'd really like you. A lot of times my opportunities for my sponsor, I haven't been asked, I've just been put into that area, and I'm like, I'll take it that this is a good thing, because it didn't feel like a good thing at the time, but I've grown in tremendous ways just from trusting this person is looking out for my interest. But I only put this book up here because if you're interested in it and kind of what the differences are, or maybe you're thinking, do I need a mentor or a sponsor? This might be a good book to kind of differentiate. Maybe test it out with a mentor and then start seeking a sponsor. All right, so my experience, like I said, I've talked as we've gone. So I've had 1 or 2 sponsors in my career. Didn't even know I had a sponsor. Didn't even know I had mentors. I just kind of, all of a sudden I started realizing I was being selected for things. And I was like, oh, wow, we're aligned. Wow, this is great. And I started feeling a lot of confidence from it because this person believed in me. And I think that's what we all seek when you think about being here at Dish. When people say they want mentors, they're looking for people that they can start aligning with and like, am I on the right track? If I want to be the CEO someday, what does that look like? And I think that could be very powerful. I've selected and I've been selected. So I've picked certain people, and like I said, then certain people have just kind of picked me. Didn't even know I was picked until somebody said, oh, looks like you have the red phone into so-and-so's office. I'm like, I had no idea I had the red phone, but I do have the red phone. I mean, I can pick that person's brain at any time. And those relationships have come and gone. So like, I thought I could pick that person's brain, and then I wasn't able to get in for like 3 months. I was like, oh, they've abandoned me, because I had become like reliant on this feedback. But basically when I asked that person, like, wow, I don't ever talk to you. He's like, you don't really need me doing this for you anymore. You're already at that point. And I was like, oh. And that's when I actually realized I want to do that for people myself. Because I was like, oh, that's powerful. Like, you don't even realize, like, you could really, just by having somebody, hey, I want to introduce you to this person, all of a sudden that person, it's opened up doors and people get a perception of them. And so I'm trying to do that with my current team, and I think it's growing and it is working. Not afraid to ask, receive feedback, and take direction. So you have to really ask yourself, do you take feedback? Like, if somebody gives you feedback, are you critical with that feedback with yourself? And if you're not, you probably don't want to seek out somebody who's probably going to give you more of it. But if you are ready to look at that, I had somebody one time tell me, dress the part. And I was like, dress the part? And I was like, what's wrong with my dress? Like, what's wrong with my clothes? But it was more about the mental frame. When you get dressed in the morning and you're putting clothes on and you're like, you know what, nobody in this room was in the previous meeting, but they were talking about people wearing spandex to work. And I was like, yeah, I probably wouldn't wear spandex to work. But if you see somebody in their exercise clothes here at Dish, you'd probably be like, they're not in the dress code, But if you see somebody dressed and you're like, I really like how that person looks, they're polished, you start kind of going, they must be somebody I want to meet. And it changes your frame. Change your own frame. Dress the part so that when you walk up, I always, when I'm going to an interview and I have a special meeting, I dress the part. Today it was not one of those days, but I'm just not feeling too good. And this was a good sounding board for me to hear myself. I don't always know how I come across, and I think that that's really important. And they've never told me what to do, much to my dismay. They give me pieces of information, and then I go away and I'm like, okay, why didn't they just tell me which one to do? Which job should I take? Which opportunity would be the best? Is that life-changing money, or is this, what is this going to look like? Which I've never had life-changing money. But it gave me perspective for me to go home, sleep on it, come back, and then I'll go back to that person. I'll say, can I have 5 minutes? And I'm very much a fan of the walk-up. The setting time has never really worked for me. If I say, I want to talk to you on Friday and it's Monday, you're probably going to see me Monday afternoon because I can't really wait and I'm very impatient. So I've always been like, can I have 5 minutes? And they're like, roll their eyes. And I'm like, I made a decision. And yeah, I knew that's what you were going to do. And I'm like, really? How did you know that's what I was going to do? Well, they set me up for it. But if they would have told me that's what to do, I may not have really had it in my heart that that's the right thing for myself. And like I said, lucky for me, I'm now finding myself mentoring others, and I'm very honored. I do feel like when I'm in meetings and I can make a plug for somebody, oh, have you actually reached out to this person? They're really good at that. Or this person's like, fantastic manager. Did you know that? Because as it gets higher, things don't always bubble up. So unless you're on the big project or you're the right-hand person, they may not know everything that you're doing. So having somebody who's there to represent you that way, I'm very honored to be that for people in my organization as well as teams that I've worked with. So trying to think if there was anything else. Is there anything else you wanted me to talk through in specifics? Have I gone through it? All right. So questions. I'll just open it up. Wow, I answered them all. I don't think it's not a mystery, right? I mean, mentoring is not a mystery. I think what it is building the confidence for yourself to actually reach out and ask for it. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts.
I think I know the answer to this, but your mentors that you've kind of had, numerous,
yeah.
Both male and female, correct?
Oh, that's actually interesting. That actually was a point that I was going to bring up. And people have heard me say this before, I don't think women do a good job of helping other women. I think that's an industry-wide. And so I have had mentors, male and female. I read in one of the articles, because I did a little research before I came up here to speak with you guys. I read in one of the articles, not only is it good for retention, but people, they start building those relationships and it'll last whether you're at the same company or not. Women tend to not mentor as frequently as men do, and men tend to mentor men. And so there's this idea, and I've mentioned this, and I bring up my employees because they're in the room, so I want to give them, tell them that I've learned from them as well. So that's kind of my way when I talk about things. I try to make sure people know that I'm learning from them. But it's very easy for a guy to say, hey, to another guy, hey, let's go have happy hour, let's go catch a drink and go sit down and talk about work stuff. But if a guy says to me, hey, you want to meet me for a drink? It's like, where is this going, right? I mean, and so I think it's more comfortable for women to ask somebody, hey, do you want to go, have a happy hour or something? But we tend to not do that, and you have to ask yourself why. Is there not enough to go around? Is there really only one job and we're all going for it and we have to take each other out at the knees? It's not the case. I think it's industry-wide, we just haven't been taught. And I really credit Dish Women's Network for giving us a voice here that we can talk about it. I give more credit to the men that are in the audience because you're interested in not just learning about the topic, but you get a little brief kind of introduction to the fact that we identify some of our, I won't call them weaknesses, but opportunities, I think. But I try to mentor women. I have found, and I've tried to give advice. They say I'm open to feedback, and it's backfired. They're not really willing to hear what I have to say. And you don't have to take everything a mentor says, right? If a mentor says, I think, you should be doing X, Y, and Z, and you're like, yeah, I kind of like the way I'm doing this. It seems to be working with everyone else. But thank you for that nugget. You don't have to do just because they told you to do it. But I do think women have an opportunity to do more of that. And I see it here at Dish. Since I've worked here at Dish, we have a lot more women working here than we did in the past. I've seen people rising up to positions. They're being promoted. And even like myself, I mean, in my 9 years that I was here or have been here, I've never seen anybody promoted from within into a director position until myself. And I feel very honored. And there were people who were not as supportive. They were like, oh, what did you do that I didn't do? And I was like, hold on, I'm opening doors for all of us. And you should see women getting the opportunities as opportunity for all of us. And if we would support each other in that, I think it could be very powerful. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Two things. The first one is about receiving feedback. Do you have any tips? I think that that's something no one wants to hear, their weaknesses.
Yep.
How do you weather that? And have you had experiences where you get something and you go home, you're crushed? And then how do you actually not just have your feelings hurt, but then
Sure.
Could you talk about that?
Sure. I don't get enough feedback, and I say that often. I think there's something about, oh, you're a director and you don't need it. So I ask sometimes. I'd say take notes. Somebody's giving you feedback. It's very easy to go away and hear something different inside. Somebody says, your voice is, you yell when you speak, and you're like, you go away and you're like, who's that? Like, I yell. People, I've never heard that before, but it's very easy if the person gives you an example and they're able to kind of articulate it to you. So I would take notes and really try to ask the person questions. And also, I mean, not everybody, and it's very true, not everybody's genuine when they give you feedback, right? I mean, that's why this is important. You have to have a trusting relationship with somebody and value the person, and it's an earned trust between you. If somebody tells you something and you learn later that they were manipulating, oh, now I have goosebumps. They were manipulating, maybe that meant something to me. They were manipulating, and they were using it to maybe have you not go for the opportunity because they wanted to go for the opportunity. I one time had a contractor that I brought to a house that I was gonna buy, and he gave me this $250,000 list of all these things that had to be done. And I was like, oh my gosh, we gotta get out of the contract. And so we canceled the contract. I kid you not, a week later, he bought the house and he did this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was totally taken. And I was so angry at myself. And I was like, never again. I'm not going to do that. I'll get 2 opinions. I'll get multiple opinions, right? You learn from these situations. You learn who you can get those answers from. For me, I do take things really personally. I'm actually super sensitive. On the outside, I may not always come across that way. I might be like, who are they? But then I'll go home and I really do. I think if you really value the person giving you feedback, there's something in it. They have a reason for giving it to you. And when I give feedback, I'm never doing it to chastise somebody or whatever. I really do want to help people. And so I always think the best until I'm proven wrong. It should always be, you should always assume people have good intent. But after multiple times, if they don't have good intent, you'll know. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
You said there's not like a set amount of times that you have to meet in a month or a year.
Right.
So what if you randomly reach out to someone who has an impressive background and you meet and you get some feedback and it takes you a whole nother year to kind of take what they've said and act on it and figure out what you want to do next and then follow up? Is it almost worse to reach out in a year again, or is it okay?
No. If you were a person that did that with me, like I said, hey, you should go and you should promote yourself and get a raise, right? And I said, and here's what I would do if I were you. I would go in there and and not make it a contingent on my job, but I would let them know that I think my worth and what I've done and blah blah blah. And it takes you till the next cycle because you've just had a PA and wasn't the time and right, and so it takes you a year and you come back and you're like, hey, I took your advice. I'd be like, awesome. I might say, what took you so long? Like, wouldn't you have loved to have that, 6 months ago? But I think it's great. I do think, and we could do another session on this, but I think networking is really key. I think if you really see somebody as valuable enough to ask them for that advice, I probably wouldn't wait a year to ever talk to them again. I would reach out here and there and go, hey, I'm still working on that stuff. I think there's something about keeping that relationship going, but I don't think it has to be formal in that. And I would be proud of anybody who came back and said they did something. I forget sometimes to give people the update. I'll say, oh yeah, I'm working on that. And then it'll be a while later and then I'll see them and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I did that like before. And then I'm kind of feel bad because they gave me advice. So I think whatever time frame it takes you, it's your growth. Like they're giving you something and then it's yours to take or, not use. So yeah. Anybody else? Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, go.
A question that we get a lot at the Women's Network is how to find a sponsor, and you touched on that. Have most of yours come from work meetings or networking events or things like this? And I guess in your day-to-day life, are there any recommendations other than the coffee counter that you have?
Yeah, I use that. So from my perspective, I worked on some very big projects that I'm very proud of here at Dish. And in working on those projects, I had visibility with different levels of people. When I was in those situations and those people became kind of people who were giving me advice or they started selecting me and I started seeing that, it was more about me asking for the next level. So when I start noticing somebody who believes in me or I have a really good relationship with them or I admire them, I'll make little plugs. Oh, I would love to do that someday. Like I went camping. I don't plan on leaving Dish. Like I love my job here at Dish. I have no intention of leaving, but I saw somebody the other day, he's a COO at another company, at a camping trip, and he was like, what are you working on? And I was like, oh, I'm working, building out this new ops center. But he's like, oh, I could totally use you. I'm like, awesome. And it was like one of those things where I kind of created that, here's somebody who I'm networking with. I have no intention of ever working for him, but I want to pick his brain at some point and use him as a resource or a reference or something. So I start building those relationships. When I see somebody values something in me, and so that's what I'd say, if you value something in someone, it's really, it's not just, patting them on the back or, stroking their ego, but if there's something you want to learn, the more you open up and you talk about things with them, the more that they will reach out to you as well. In my case as well, I actually received some very negative feedback from what was a mentor, that I was this close to like not being in the job anymore. And I was like, what? I'm like breaking my back. I'm like going home, 60 hours a week here. And I'm like, what do you expect from me? And he was like, take a vacation. And he wasn't my direct manager. He said, take a vacation, take a week off and come back. That was the advice to me. I was like, take a vacation. Okay. And I did. I took a week off and I went on vacation and I came back totally refreshed, totally was able to pick up the pieces and get things moving. We weren't failing. It was just I wasn't dealing with the situation very well. I was taking it all on my back. I wasn't delegating, and I thought I had to do it all. I came through that situation. I got a pretty nice promotion, and then that person started going, she's capable. She took advice. She came back, she did the things, and I got some very good feedback from him. He's been a sponsor of mine now for 5 years. So it's been one of those things where when things come up, whether it's in my current role or if I'm trying to make a decision or, I'll reach out or he'll reach out, but I do get opportunities because of that. So I think sometimes you may think the feedback you're getting from somebody, oh my gosh, I don't even ever want to go in that person's office again. It can turn around. It doesn't always have to be something that that you have to, I gotta go find. I didn't go find another job. I didn't even update my resume. I actually the other day was looking at my resume. I haven't updated it in 4 years. I was like, okay. Or actually, 2013 was the last time. 3 years. So yeah. So it's like one of those things. I'm not looking, but like it's one of those things where sometimes you just get picked up and placed, and you've experienced that. Like you ask, you say, I'm ready for something else, and then that person goes, you're totally capable because I've seen you do it. Did that answer the question? It's pretty long-winded, I'm sorry.
I have a question for the group. Who here has a mentor?
Oh, that was actually on here, yeah. Yeah.
Or has a sponsor? Just a couple of you?
Who wants one? Right. So I would say there's no hard, fast, there's no, this is the formula for getting it. If you came for that, I'm sorry. I should have asked, what's your expectations in coming here? But hopefully it opens some thoughts in your mind of, you know what? I could ask somebody, I could be coming to somebody, or maybe somebody comes up in your mind where you're like, I could learn something from that person, and that you now maybe leave here and you just reach out and just say, you know what, I just went to this presentation on mentoring. This would be a good, actually talk about like a door opener, right? I mean, it's kind of that like, hey, I just went to this mentoring thing and I think I have some things I want to work on. Would you be willing to talk to me? I mean, use me. Tasha said I need to come talk to you. No, but I think it just is an ask, and it's that sit down and meet with somebody, just for buy them coffee, take them out to lunch, even if you're like, I hope they don't think I'm hitting on them. Just kidding. Yeah, come talk to me. I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one. My calendar is up to date.
So when you move to new like teams or management teams, or when you first started and stuff, did that make you nervous, and how did you get through that process of like saying, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't think I'm good for it?
Yeah, the imposter syndrome.
How do you get over
Yeah. Fake it till you make it. And it's true. I think I'm having a fever right now. I'm sorry. Yeah, and I say that in jest, but I do think when you get into any new job, everybody in that job, whether you're the boss or you're a coworker, they owe it to you to catch you up, to bring you, they have all the information. And in this sense, they become kind of those people that you reach out to. I've gone into jobs where I felt like this is such a bad fit, and I almost felt apologetic to the people that I was like, I am so sorry, I know nothing about what you do. But very quickly, I realized they had value in what they knew, but they were lacking a lot of the things that I brought to the table. And by sitting down with them and actually figuring out what I could add and offer, it really became a mutually beneficial relationship. And these weren't necessarily mentoring, these were I was managing them. And I've been fortunate enough to have people say, you were one of the best managers I've ever worked for. And I'm like, that's awesome, because I want nothing more. I mean, I've kind of changed my model. I used to be just like an individual contributor, get the work done. I had to be the person, and I'm learning now how to help other people to do their job and feel good about it, and hopefully not have to step in all the time. So, yeah, did that answer your question? Yeah, but I fake it. Yeah. Ask somebody, how am I showing up? Am I doing what I think I'm doing? Anyone else? Well, like I said, feel free to reach out to me if you do want to talk. My door is open, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you.